I'm so excited. I received my box from Shelley for our Flippin' Frenzy Spring Edition. The membership group, we decided to send each other at least 4 to 5 items that we've recently thrifted, and we are going to flip them on a Flippin' Frenzy. Here is a peek of those items again. And honestly, I was going to flip all of these, and I decided one of them will be in next week's video, so be watching for that. Here's project 1, and Shelley sent me these 2 frames. I actually had no clue what I was going to do with them, and when I put out that reel showcasing what Shelley sent me, I did have one viewer say she found these exact frames at the bins and she sold them as is. That kind of made me think, should I flip them or should I sell as is? But I had another idea. So what I did is I started off by unscrewing the backs, and I wanted to paint the frames. I was not digging the color, you guys. Some of you may be cringing that I'm painting these, but they are going to be painted coal black by Fusion. If you haven't used Fusion mineral paint yet, it is a one-step paint, so the top coat is built in, and that's exactly what I wanted. I didn't want to mess around with having to top coat anything, so I actually applied 2 even coats. I thought 1 coat would be sufficient, but a little bit of that darker color was still peeping through, so I went back and I added a second coat. Because I do resell all of these items, I always finish the back as well. I really want to completely make this look finished. I'm not going to just paint the frames, but here is my vision for the frames. If you guys follow me and my maker's box, these were part of a past maker's box, and I still have a few left. And you guys, these little cameos are just amazing, or silhouettes, whatever you want to call them. And they're so popular. So I thought I am going to create 2 different little silhouettes with these frames. I'm not going to pull out the glass. I'm going to leave those as is in case somebody decides one day they don't want to use the silhouettes, but they want to use the glass. So I'm painting the silhouettes black. I'm going to let those dry. I'm actually taking a piece of rice paper and I'm going to trace around the piece of mirrored glass, and I'm going to cut those out, and that's going to be the backing. And once those frames dry, I'm just going to flip the frame back over. I'm going to put down that piece of rice paper, put down the mirror, and then put the back right back on. And that's really how easy this flip was. Once the backs are on, now we can apply the silhouettes. And I'm using Titebond, but first I want to position those in there exactly how I want them. And I strategically placed one facing one way and the other facing the other. I'm adding just a tiny bit of Titebond in the center, and this is my recommendation always. I always take my finger and I feather it to the edges. You don't want a lot of that glue oozing out when you set your piece down. This applies to items like this, or if you're applying any molds to items, that's what I highly recommend. Now, project 2, Shelley sent me this wood piece, and I thought about, right away when I saw it, I thought about adding a cloche to it, and I wanted to paint it white. But then when I was out on Pinterest, I had actually seen a couple different ways that people styled the cloches, and I was going to try both of them and see which ones worked, and I am going to add teacups to the inside of the cloche. So I'm going to show you that in a minute. But what I'm using here is white swan, and I'm applying one even coat of white swan to the entire piece and coming back, adding a second coat. And the reason I decided to use DIY paint is that I wanted to distress this up. I wanted it to look old. I was thinking about adding some dark wax to it, but I thought, nope, sometimes when I'm adding dark wax, it really deepens it too much. And I still wanted this to be bright and airy for spring. After it dried, I came back with a damp rag and I wet distressed it. And you guys, if you've been following me for a bit, you will know I love to wet distress DIY paint. It is so easy. You can sand it, but then you get a lot of extra dust. By wet distressing, it gives you a little bit more control as well. So what I do is just rub over all the raised areas, and then on the flat areas, I just randomly rub here and there just to add a little bit more distress to it. The last thing you need to do with DIY paint is you do need to seal it. It does not come with a sealer built in. I am using DIY's Big Top. I'm applying one even coat over the entire piece. I'm going to let it dry, and then we're going to finish this project. The wood base is completely dry, so I first set that down, and then I add a couple teacups and this saucer. And I was hoping, you guys, that the saucer would actually fit inside of the cloche. It does not, but it's still fine. I wish I had a cloche that was just a little bit bigger. Now, my vision here is I want to stagger the teacups. So I want to put a handle one way, another handle the other, and then the other one the other way. I have a little nest that I'm going to put in the top one, and I thought I'm going to add a little bit more green. And so I had, when I used to do terrariums, I had this bag of terrarium filler all in my stash. So I grabbed some of this like shredded greenery and I set that in, and I just started building it up. I wanted to make it look like it was a bird, like a birdhouse, like a bird built this little nest in here, and he had a bunch of green sticking out of all the teacups, and I just think this turned out so stinking cute in the end. For project 3, I actually upcycled one of these a while ago. I added a bunch of transfers to it and it sold immediately. And I thought I could do that again, but I'm going to do something a little different. I am actually going to take Sweet Pickins milk paint in the color In a Pickle. And you guys, this has been one of my favorites since I started selling Sweet Pickins. And the key here is it's a 50-50 ratio of warm water to milk paint. When the milk paint is in dry form, there is no shelf life, so it lasts forever. But once you mix it, you have roughly 24 hours to use it, and then it spoils. And Tara from the Reclaimed Ranch gave me a little pro tip. Normally you let it sit for like roughly 10 minutes to really like thicken up a bit. If you add just a little bit more to it right away, you can start using it immediately. So that's what I'm doing here. And I ended up adding a little bit too much more. So I mixed it all up, and then I added it to the handle and then to the little round knob. And I still had extra. And you guys, I can never let something go to waste. So as I was painting this, I was trying to think, I mixed up too much. What else can I paint with it? So you're gonna see what I use the rest on. But I am trying to mimic like an old vintage green on the handle and the knob. If you guys missed my little thrifting adventure in Madison, I stopped at the Goodwill bins there. I had roughly less than an hour, and I ran in. I found these 3 little wood bowls. So I went into my truck, grabbed those, and I decided I was going to use the rest on these 3 little wood bowls. And it was perfect. It was exactly the amount of paint that I needed. So I painted the insides, I let those dry, then I flipped the back over and I painted the back sides next. What I love about milk paint is the unpredictability of it. And it automatically, or well, I shouldn't say automatically, it naturally chips in certain areas. And the one thing that I loved about this handle is that it stuck in most of the places, but just me rubbing on it, it chipped just randomly, like it looked authentic. I did take a piece of sandpaper and sand up or rough up that little wood knob. It absorbed into the knob, but by sanding it here and there, it really gave it an authentic aged look. You do need to seal milk paint, and you guys, if you haven't tried oil wax yet, I would highly recommend it. It is by Sweet Pickins. I have all the supplies on my website. There are 4 different colors. Actually, it's a clear, a dark, a black, or a white oil wax. And the key is you apply it, you want to let it sit for 10 minutes, and then you want to go back, and then I always just take a piece of paper towel and wipe away the excess. The other thing I should note here, because it is oil, it also will ruin your brush. So don't use a good brush. I always just use an old chip brush, and I toss it when I toss the rags. That is the other thing, because it is oil, it can be combustible. So you do never want to put the brush and the rags in a bag. It could combust. And so what I always just recommend is putting it outside and letting it completely dry outside and then disposing of it. After you've let it sit for roughly 10 minutes, I just take a piece of paper towel and wipe away the excess. And you guys, I just love this. It looks so authentic. It actually looks like it's an old vintage sifter. I think it turned out amazing. And next, I'm just gonna add a little bit of decor to it. to really add a bit of spring to this, I had this old nest that I actually found at the bins a while ago. It's been sitting in my stash, so I grabbed it, I shoved it inside. It was the perfect fit. I liked how it was kind of like sitting out a little bit, but then the inside of the nest was really in there. It reminds me of something a bird would actually do. On a recent thrifting adventure, I did find a bag of eggs, so I threw those in there as well. I was trying to figure out exactly how I wanted to position this nest, and I love it. Next, I grabbed those bowls and I wiped the bowls out. And you guys, I just think these bowls look so authentic too. I love how I sanded them a bit, brought back some of that wood finish, and then the dark oil wax just really deepens everything up. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's flipping frenzy, and I think we're gonna do this again. So if you guys like the flipping frenzy, let me know in the comments. I love getting items from other people and flipping them, so it was a ton of fun. And if you guys haven't yet, go ahead, hit that subscribe button and turn on your bell notifications. That way you guys don't miss out on a video when I post it. Now, after my video today, there is going to be a series of other videos, part of the flipping frenzy. So I hope you guys stay tuned for the next one. Otherwise, we are going to see you in my next video, which is next week. Have a good one, guys, and I can't wait to hear what your favorite item was in today's video.